morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most valuable 90 minutes of your day. I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador for today's venture. And today's show is the voice in your head your father's? But before we get to the show, let's talk to our co host. And today we have Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
Hi, nice to be here.
Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Deirdre, our development strategist and leader of today's show,
I'm so happy to see you guys.
Dennis, our freedom facilitator,
Blessed love and welcome, beautiful people.
and once again, we have a special guest, Rod Williams, with us. And Rod, do you want to chime in?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy to be a guest. I'm usually a viewer, so it's fun to be on the other side.
Absolutely, and we're happy to have you, Rod. With that said, let's get to Deirdre. Deirdre, where we head today?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So, who is your inner father voice? Let's start off with that. Anybody? I know what my inner father voice is like. It's quite cold and harsh, and unavailable.
I've
So it's,
spent years redirecting the father from the external father to the internal father. So instead of listening to the imprinted messages that were left to me as a legacy of my childhood, I am trying, or most of the time I succeed at embracing my own fathering and being a good father to myself, as opposed to relying on someone who's obviously not me.
I
anyone else
myself,
want to chime in?
I've got a real positive myself. Honestly, my father. Whenever I think of him or the voice in my head in that regard, I think of like positive things. When I was first starting to ride my motorcycle when I was 4 and 5 years old, he would give me a lot of coaching, and of course I started racing motorcycles, and just all the time a lot of like positive reinforcement and coaching type stuff. So I might be the odd one today on this one.
I'm really glad to hear that you have a close relationship with your dad. But it's not like that was my only measure of relationships with men. I have uncles and I have brothers, and I have mentors as well and friends. So it was only till Agnieszka brought my attention to it that maybe that critical voice is not mine, is maybe like from past trauma. Willow, how about you? What's your inner father voice sounding?
Well, I've always had two, because ever since I was 18 months old, I've had two separate father figures that were very dominant in my childhood. And one of them is a warm, tough love, like get back up on the horse when you fall off. Don't ever be afraid of being be afraid of being afraid, basically. And just kind of like tackling things head on. And that's my stepdad. His voice is very it's much more comforting, but it's also very tough. It doesn't allow for like, yeah, you're sitting there and you're crying, but you really should like get up, put your boots on, go handle your stuff. The other one is very, very cold. And it doesn't take much imagination. It's not like a voice or like what would they say. It's what have they said. So that one's a lot harder to push out. It usually comes up
So that
disguising itself
sounds
as my voice.
like a
especially when I'm really-
pre-recorded messages from childhood, as opposed to the malleable voice of the inner parenting. This is like actual recording that like plays whenever you press a specific button inside your brain.
So
Yeah.
how would we distinguish that then? How would like we differentiate that from the inner voice that is your father voice to things that have imprinted, burnt into your mind?
So usually what the things that are imprinted in your mind, they're in the original speaker's voice, but she just said that she emulates that. So she basically, there's a part of her inside that learned those things by heart and now repeats specific canned messages from childhood back to herself. So that's a more complex issue. Most people are carrying, the teacher, the mentor, the father, the older cousin, whatever, in their head, and that person speaks in their own voice, these little pre-recorded nuggets of wisdom, or possibly not wisdom, things that traumatized you or imprinted you or shocked you or shaken you at one point. With what you're saying, Willow, that you're looking at your own part repeating that thing, then that's a self-discipline issue, I would say. Like, why are you allowing your children to talk back to you like that and repeat what some asshole said?
Because if I didn't allow it, then I wouldn't know that they'd be saying it.
Well, yeah, but then working with them to make it, like teaching the children not to beat each other in the daycare that is your brain.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit more than that. I find that the way that I do it is kind of taking the person as a whole person. So that's for reasons with her narcolepsy. That's a lot. That's a whole nother level of her being able to will that into manifestation, because Willow suffers from that. And so she can't, just to say, oh, okay, it sounds like a discipline issue. That's hard that's an unrealistic expectation to put her up to everybody else's level because her body's not there.
Well, I didn't actually say what particular technique she should use for that. I was just, giving a general opinion. It doesn't mean that there aren't 1,000 ways of addressing this particular issue and creating a comfort level inside her own head that will allow her to love herself no matter what.
And just because it's a discipline issue, like, don't get me wrong, that one doesn't bother me at all, because I've heard that it used to bother me. But I've heard this since I was a child. I do have problems with discipline. I have problems maintaining a routine of learning things. It's very easy for me to fall into the sleeping all day routine. As you mentioned, my narcolepsy makes that incredibly easy. It's actually incredibly difficult for me to stay awake and stay coherent for conversations and pick up on everything, on top of dealing with like PTSD and all of that. So it is a discipline issue. It's just not, that discipline issue isn't stemming from laziness. It's stemming from
I never suggested that.
And most people but most people, when they hear the word discipline and like it's a discipline issue, most people were, this is the pre-recorded voice that we're hearing. Like, I knew exactly what that was as soon as I heard it, because I was like, I have been called lazy my entire life, and it's not true. Like, if you get me into something, I will work harder than anyone, but you have to get me into something that I'm interested in and make it worth my while before I'm ready to spend my energy on it.
Yeah, that's right. Because to you, that is more valuable than what we could understand. Yeah. Dennis, how about you? Who is your inner father voice? How do they sound?
Just off the bat, that's a tough one for me, because it would be more easy for me to get images or pictures, like of instead of a voice. So that it certainly is there, but it would only things I remember like vividly or that come up from time to time are like phrases that I remember. And I would pick out like the empowering ones, or the ones that I identify with, that I can say, oh yeah, that defines us as maybe a family, or as me, like my character. That's something that I got from my daddy, and something that he said that was really that hit the nail on the head. And but to really say that like I'm really like focused on hearing that voice or so, that would be difficult for me even to identify. But what I do, something that really stood out lately, or like within the last few years to me, which was very revealing, is that when I see my father interacting with my children, And that brought back like, huge flashbacks of what happened, when I was a child. And like I get like a mirror of those feelings that I had back then, and like it brings me right back in those situations. And it's like, whoa, like, and like I got contracted, like physically even, like, whoa, and I feel this, like, oh, it's difficult to speak, and all those emotions that come back, and I like, and I feel this like kind of tenseness coming up. And then I watch my daughter, for example, reacting, or Luca, who's really little still, reacting to it as well. And I see my sister, and I see my siblings also in that situation. That's really interesting and really revealing. And then at the same time, so it brings flashbacks, but at the same time also the situation is different, because now he's not the father, but he's the grandfather. So he's in a more, he has gone through a lot. And then also he's not in the having to be the father, but he's more relaxed in a way that he's a grandfather. So like it is amazing, like the progress that I can see, or maybe progress, the difference that I can see now. Like he has the ease of even more. Whereas like one example would be that he thought that he has to be the teacher, like, and ensure that they learn and they understand to read and write. And every time he comes, like, and it's like out of love really, and out of wanting to make a positive difference. But it's it's a pressure, like it's pressure for who is there, because they didn't ask for it or so, but you just come and here it is, and you have to learn this. And it takes time and effort, like massively even, but it's overwhelming. And it's not it wasn't a demand from in that case my children, but it's something that he thinks they need, or he feels they need to make it in life, but they're a little bit still. And so those situations are like they bring back memory to me, and they open up books that have been closed for a long while. And then they help me also to kind of relate and to differently to him, and to see even more now, like how he has been doing back then, and he's doing right now the best that he can do, and he is who he is right now. And so the intention behind it, I can see it, and I can see that it's not something to put down somebody, but it's something to elevate, but from his perspective, of course. So then I'm now in a position where I can mitigate and try to let him understand like how it comes across, what he sometimes is doing, and also talk to my children then, and say, hey, look, it might be sounding like this and that to you, because I went through it as well, but try to see it like that. Or if it's really too much, then like speak up for yourself and tell him it's like this, it's too much, it's like that. And so that's an interesting situation. But it's it was very interesting also to listen to all of your perspective. And I think there is much for me to much room for growth of actually listening to my inner talk, my self-talk as well, and maybe finding out those things that might not be the highlights and the things that I feel are positive, but the ones that are kind of dragging me down or holding me back as well, and then identify those and shine my light on it, and then see what will happen.
Good point. Thank you. Good points. Michael, who is your inner father voice?
I think Michael already spoke, and you meant Rod.
Yeah. Rod. Yeah.
I meant Rod.
Hand it over to
Rod.
Rod.
He did.
Definitely.
All right,
No, that's a good question. I've never really given it much thought, honestly. And I guess first I want to throw the question back to you guys. Is the inner father, does he have like a father role? And does the inner mother have can the inner mother be the inner father, and vice versa? Like, how are we making the distinction?
I'm so glad you made that question. Thank you. I'd have to ask Amy as well.
I don't know. For me, it's like we all have the left side and the right side, the left brain and the right brain, the masculine and the feminine. The yin yang symbol is inside us. So in that, the masculine and the feminine interact with each other, and also take care of the core essence of who we really are. So that's what I envision and imagine that being my inner parents, the ideal inner parents, my inner masculine and my inner feminine interacting with each other to take care of the core, the baby, who is really me. Maybe my inner child, maybe the spark of God inside me. I don't know.
So what effect? Okay. Sorry.
No. So I'll say, as of lately, my inner father sounds a lot like Richard Grove. Just with all of the lectures and being in Autonomy, and all of the things he says that I think are useful. Like Dennis was saying, kind of things that stick out, or things that cliches or whatever you want to call them. So my inner father has a lot of positive things to say, but at the same time, it's combining with, all right, you got to do it, just do it. Like, don't think about it. Don't consider it. Don't, just do it. Because that's the only way I'm gonna get an answer or get to whatever solution I'm looking for, is to just do it.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So what effects does this have on your life? That, whether it's criticisms, or whether it's being harsh, or whether it's kind of being that respectful, safe voice for you, that safe presence for you?
When it was criticism, it was really hard. Like, if you could even tell with my face, like my lips are like this little. I was just like, all pinched. And, you could tell that there was a mean inner voice in that person. And then as I learned and was able to identify, and I grew and I read more and I studied more, went to more classes, I was able to go, okay, you're not so bad. We're always, that whole worthlessness thing, it's so present in so many people, right? And realizing that you're not worthless, you're the world is better with you, and things like that. That's some things that I think we should embody throughout our lives. Guys?
Well said. What about you, Willow? It's right. I'll go. So effects for me is, I don't know, that inner father voice. So it sounded like it was harsh, unavailable, and all that. Yeah, that is, I experienced that. But for me, it's that safe presence, that security, that respect, being all those things to myself is what I consider that that father voice. So what effects would that be? It made me feel safe. So if I'm feeling vulnerable, like, oh my gosh, life's just getting too much, and just like hugging myself, would that be the inner, an effect of the inner father voice, Agnieszka?
Yes. And Willow, you should maybe leave and come back. Then, oh, there you are. You unmuted.
I think I got it. No, my screen just froze and it wouldn't let me pull up the bar, so I had to wait a few minutes.
It's terrible technology against us.
Yeah, sometimes, but I've always had technology against me. There were 4 straight years where anytime I walked within 6 feet of a computer, it started beeping at me. So what was your question again, Deirdre? In trying to unmute, I totally spaced what you asked.
Yeah, sure. What effects does the inner father voice have on your life, both positive and negative?
I'd say the positive is it does help me push forward. It helps me because I have been pushed in the past, and I've had father figures who have, regardless of how their tactics, have pushed me to do the best that I could. I kind of know that I can always do more. That helps my self-esteem, knowing what I can actually do if I put my time and energy into it. The negative effects, I would say that it weighs on my, it's like the other side of the coin here. It weighs on my self-esteem. I have that really cold voice that somehow I've been able to separate and be like, okay, well, this voice is very disappointed in everything that I do, and that's somehow okay. It doesn't feel right. I know that it is okay. I know that I have walked away from a certain part of my life that and for a long time I didn't want to be that kind of masculine side. I didn't want to really push the tough love and actually be okay, now it's time to not care about your feelings. I have cared about your feelings to a certain point, and it took me a really long time. It actually took being married to my husband, who's a very blunt person, to get me to to the point where I could start putting my boundaries up. But yeah, that's the negative effect.
But is it
really
is it about not caring about your feelings? Because a lot of, so this is, I see,
absolutely not.
right.
It's
So,
about caring too much.
so I see a lot of people using feelings as facts. Oh, I feel this, therefore it is. But feelings are more like signposts. They like point us away from things that are not serving us and toward things that are serving us. And it is up to us to be able to really analyze and interpret our own feelings to the level that we can use it.
That's just where I was gonna go, or that's the same direction my thoughts went a while ago, because resuming as like we talked so far about the father voice, so it was first difficult for me to, what is it, to define it, and then I was kind of listening keenly to you, and then I thought, how can I relate to it? What does it mean to me? And then what I really feel would be an important question to ask, or the question that just arose, even that goes the same direction like Agnieszka was going, is what does life ask us to do through the father voice? Because if it's something, whether it's something that we make up, like some kind of construct, or whether it's something that really exists, or that is somewhere there, or whether we want to follow how you, Agnieszka, were explaining, the female and the male, and we give it a name and we give it a voice. You don't have to believe or be on board with any of that, but however you identify it, however you label or name it, but what, for me, it would be resumed as like, what does life want to tell you through that? However you experience it, you have this memory, you have this voice in your head, you have this message, this thing coming up. So what you do with that? What is life asking you to do with, like, how you're supposed to posture? Does it mean to do something? Like Rod, you were pointing out, it's important to get from the thinking and from the talking to the doing. So what does it ask you to do? What does it ask you? How does it ask you to, to posture on an emotional level? What kind of thoughts are you supposed to, cut out, or how you're supposed to, be focusing on, and how you're supposed to, posture yourself on a spiritual level? So that would be something that I would come up with, or that would, for me, in my mind, resume what we were talking about so much. What do you think about that, guys? What would what would it ask you to do? How would it ask you to posture that father voice? If you had to come up, like, briefly with the father voice in your head, like, what is it telling you? Like, from day one, when you first became aware of that, what in essence is it telling you to do?
Self-respect.
You mean the ideal father voice, or the injured father voice, or the aberrant father voice that we might have picked up along the way?
Both would be interesting, right? Like, first you have to be aware that there's one that's not ideal. So what is that telling me? And once you identify that, then you can turn it around and see, okay, what would be the ideal one? And then you focus on that. I think both would be interesting.
That's my whole journey. That was my whole journey, from having this really oppressive, critical, worthlessness inspiring thing in my head all the time. And no matter how long I didn't interact with the people who imprinted that upon me, that didn't seem to go away. It was always very alive in my head. And then I realized that I was letting it live in my head. Like, I basically invited it there, and I put it up, and I gave it a room with a couch and a TV, and it's happy there. And so then I started figuring out how to get it out. So there was an eviction notice a couple times posted on the door. I had to go to extreme measures, but eventually, it still visits every now and then, but it's not living there.
So would you have come out of that sense of self-worthlessness without that voice being there in the first place, screaming at you that you're worthless? Would you, like, without that voice, would you have overcome that feeling, or even been aware of it in that way?
So without that voice, I wouldn't have had a challenging childhood, right? So then we're like, what would it be like if I had a childhood where everybody was like, just like holding me, carrying me in a golden carriage through the streets while feeding me grapes dipped in chocolate, right? I didn't have that kind of a childhood. I predict
that you would have been an unbearable adult. Just gonna predict that.
Some people might argue that I am an unbearable adult right now, so
Well, we seem to like you,
but
twice a week.
At least twice a week.
All right, Mike, Rod, whoever wants to chime in next. What effects does this have on your life? That inner father voice.
I was going to add something I read, and I'm not sure if it was in The Body Keeps the Score, but it was about the sons basically taking on the father's challenge. So like some of the things that maybe the father struggled with, the sons basically take on that challenge. And so to some degree, I feel that probably rings true to me. Some of the things that I saw my father struggle with are things that I've had a challenge with in my life too. But I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Oh, big time to
Um,
me. That's interesting.
yeah, there you go. Thank you. Rod, what?
So I was kind of thinking, because I haven't given it much thought, so just now. The father voice isn't the problem, it's the mother voice, I guess it would be. And the mother voice is always giving me excuses, maybe, of why I shouldn't do something, or why I should, or how being lazy is okay, or taking a break is okay. So I would say the father voice is more so the voice that's making me be proactive, and the mother voice is
Ah,
trying to be like, no, it's okay to,
nice.
to rest, to put your feet up. It's okay to, take a break. It's okay to not do whatever that other voice is saying that you should be doing.
But that makes sense because the masculine energy is the action and the feminine energy is the receiving. So you're receiving rest while you're acting something else, right? So that makes sense.
It's so true. It
All
makes
We
right.
sense to me too.
also
It's exactly my parents. Tell it, "Mama, tell me, no, take it easy. You're doing too much, and go sleep, and take it easy." And my father is exactly like Mike was saying. Like, wow, like if I had to think, like, just off the top of my head, like, oh, the challenges of my father is like, wow, like I hated, like, years ago when I was compared to my father, because, or to my grandfather even, and it was done like in a in a way like, oh, that side of the family and whatever. And but so it's true, like there's many similarities, of course, but still, it doesn't make really sense to compare you to anybody, even if it's somebody who may be similar to you, because you're unique. And so it doesn't really it didn't make sense to me, and I didn't like that at all. But what you said there about the challenge, and so, yeah, definitely, like I can see, in the personality, in the kind of struggle, in the way, like how I approach things, I can definitely see myself, or I can see my father in me in many ways. And that hit home not too long ago, even like with relationships. It's like, because the fear that my father, for example, had, like, the same thing that happened to him in his life would happen to me, and he was very afraid that it would happen to me. So he was like, I was able, luckily, to see the intention behind it, and he was trying to give me, counsel and to help me in that. But then I also had to say, yeah, like I see that exactly, and I see like how you reach that position. But at the same time, I try to look at it, but also I can only live my life, and I have to make the decision, like how I feel right now, how it is the right thing. And if I have to risk everything, then I have to risk everything. And then it still has to be my decision. I can't live up to anybody else's viewpoint, or because I haven't had the experiences, and I can't live anybody else's life still. But it hit home, everything that you just said, guys.
Well said. All right. So some of those effects, positive and negative, but sometimes emotional kind of trauma from the negative ones, or they don't have to necessarily be negative, maybe just a bit harsh. The emotional detachment kind of comes forth. So have you guys heard of that? Having an emotional
sounds pretty
detachment from
familiar.
yourself? Yeah, so this projects, but when you are emotionally detached from yourself, you project high emotional hopes and fears on another person, or an experience or an event. You have an extreme fear of being betrayed or recognized. So that means dressing yourself up. You're like either hiding yourself or dressing yourself to appear scarier, uglier, meaner, like emos kind of come to mind, in fear of being recognized. This emotional attachment is from that father void. So father void causes emotional detachment of yourself. And so you do things. So, fear of being betrayed or recognized is one of those. And another one, the other ones are fear of being ignored or neglected. What do you
Hang
think?
on.
What do you guys think about that list?
Hang on. So does that explain why all the men in North America wear those really long, loose shorts because they're hiding their body, and big oversized T-shirts?
No, they do that because it's just healthier. Because if you wear the tiny ones, then you know what happens.
You gotta air those balls out.
But it's
Gosh,
not like wearing
yeah.
linen. They were like some plastic shorts. That can't be healthy. If it was
I
loose
think
linen pants, that'd be cool.
that's a very interesting question that may take another show to deal with.
And
but,
back.
I just want to say that I am like the poster child for emotional detachment. And when you say that, I'm like, oh shit, I must have a father void, because I definitely was emotionally detached and still am today in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I understand that. From that list that I said, which ones kind of rang true for you? For me, it was fear of being betrayed, ignored, and neglected. Being recognized is totally okay for me because I want to do the opposite to that, being betrayed, ignored, and neglected. So that was high hopes and fears. So putting extremely unrealistic expectations on others in an event or an experience. Fear of being betrayed or recognized. Fear of being ignored or neglected. Which ones reign true, do you think?
Almost all of those.
Oh.
Yeah, can you have a
in one
smorgasbord
situation or
of
another.
fears? Do you have to
You
pick
can
one
have-
over the
You
other?
can take them all and go, oh my gosh, I am so
They all
emotionally
fit on my
attached.
plate. No.
I am just a messed up person.
I'm not sure
No.
I understand emotionally detachment the same way, like as you described it. Not like if you would have tell me what does it mean to emotionally detach or from my emotions, that to me that means that I have the ability to not be overcome and totally attached or involved with whatever emotion I'm feeling at the moment, but that I can detach from whatever is going on my emotional level and kind of stand back, and that
I
doesn't
don't
mean
think
would
she
not live
means
out.
it in your way, because you're talking
yeah,
about
that's what I'm saying.
like stepping into the godhood, God self, and looking at it from above, whereas she's talking about like putting your feelings in a small metal box and burying it deep inside her stomach until it turns into cancer. Not the same kind of detachment.
The difference is the intention. When you separate to observe the other part, you fully recognize that you are separating to entities, let's just use that for lack of a better term, from each other, to observe each of them and know that they are one. Emotional detachment and psychological detachment consist of disassociation, which means your brain will separate, not your brain, these would the terms get so difficult to say.
Mind.
I'll use, your mind separates from the body. So your mind will, this is where you get like dreams of looking at your own body, or you notice that is your body, but you also know that you are watching yourself. And then there's depersonalization, where the mind actually separates completely and does not recognize you as yourself, that it is part of you. It recognizes itself, the part that is disassociating, and the part that it is observing, as two separate things that do not equal one.
Yes.
I would just add, for me, it was like I would do the actions that I thought required. Like if I'm trying to show someone I care about them, I would take the actions to do that. But when it came to actually verbally expressing that, I had some real difficulties with that kind of stuff. So
Why?
for
What were
me,
you
it was
afraid
like,
of?
I guess it was like betrayal.
You were
know.
afraid that they're gonna throw your love in your face.
Yep. That's it.
No.
Nailed it.
They're gonna abandon you once you open up that secret part of you, and you're like, okay, I love you. They're gonna go, haha, screw you, and run away.
That must be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a common fear.
Rod, we haven't heard from you in a while.
No, I'm being super introspective. Like I'm like, damn, what am I? So I guess I'd say I struggled a lot with being seen. Was it? Kind of.
Being recognized.
yeah, being recognized. But I guess I don't feel that way as much now. Um, and I would, because I basically like I would drink a lot, and as I gave up drinking as much, I came to realize that I would do that, so I would be more personable, more social, more willing to talk to people and stuff like that. But after a while, I realized I do that naturally, so there's no need for me to have to drink to do it, I guess. Um, but yeah, no, I feel like I need to go on an emotional like checklist to see like, all right, what do I got going on?
Oh,
Yeah, but
Mike,
that's what the
talking
shows
about
like that.
emotional checklist, can we go over, since this is a father thing, and I think that your emotional systems on thing is a very good fatherhood thing. Before we end this episode, can we talk about the systems check thing that you do? I
So
just
you want
really
me to come
like
If we
back
it.
have,
and ask
if
him?
we have time.
Yes, there's also a
Yeah.
comment from Adam sitting there waiting for us to talk about. So whenever we have a moment, but it's about the positive
Well,
roles. So if when we move back to like how to create the ideal father, then we can talk to Mike about the systems on thing and Adam about the thing. Okay, go on.
that's okay. All right, we'll finish this section. So yeah, let's chime into our audience.
Okay, so Adam says that when he's working closely with somebody, like with a man that he admires, he often takes on the traits, and then he hears the voice of that person in his head, during that time when he's working with that person. So that's interesting. And yeah, I have done that before when I've worked with somebody I admire, or somebody gave me a particularly good piece of advice. Like I store that recording in my head and use it to strengthen myself in the future. What about you guys?
I would
Yeah,
agree.
that's actually how I learned. That's how I learned social skills. I was really bad at it, and I just I didn't realize this was a thing that people do. I just thought that everyone did it actually. But it was like, yeah, any person that I liked, and I liked their style, the way they talked, um the way that they moved their body or walked or like did something, like any of that, I would store it in my mind and I would try to replicate it until eventually when I looked in the mirror I was like, okay, that's exactly what I want my body to be doing. This is exactly how I want to look. So I learned how to portray myself, and eventually I just like got tired of it. Was almost like trying on clothes, and I was like, okay, I just want like a wardrobe. I want an actual wardrobe of this is me. And then that actually translated into cleaning my closet and actually getting a wardrobe down to match my range of personality and something that is actually me, instead of just have, oh my gosh, that's why I have so many clothes. I just realized that. I have to have costumes.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
She showed me her shoe collection, and oh my gosh, I'm jealous.
It's small.
Wow.
It's small. Anyone who
It
knows
is
me,
not.
I only have like, I have a really bad shoe shopping problem.
They're all beautiful and gorgeous. Oh my gosh, gorgeous.
Okay, let's
shoes.
hear from the boys. Come on. Enough about shoes.
I have a secret tip on how to overcome social inhibition of any kind.
Okay.
You want to know it?
Pretend you're drunk when you're not drunk. No. What?
No, just go to Brazil.
Just
Just
get drunk.
just stay in Brazil for a little while, and your social skills will be like through the roof, because there's no way how you can, be in a little corner like being Brazilian is a joke now, but like that did it for me. Like that was a huge thing. Like I didn't notice that some of it rub up because like I'm around, I still am, and I have been around like Brazilians for a long while, living together with them and being in Brazil before going to Jamaica and stuff. But that, and I didn't realize like how some of it actually, like spill over to me until I came back home, and I was like, what happened to you guys? Like, and I was always like perfectly all right by myself. I never like go out, I never like party or go out much, but wow, like the doors that opened just through that, the ability of connecting to people like that easily and not having like an inhibition, not being like afraid of talking to somebody just like that on the road.
Okay,
Is like,
hold on.
wow.
How did you do that? You paused for a moment and took a breath.
I paused.
You like held their gaze. How did you do it?
How
I
did
just
how
wanted
did it
to
what? You mean like
decrease
over?
that inhibition.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, you're breaking
overcome it
up. I
then.
couldn't hear. Sorry, I lost the sentence. I couldn't hear what you said. You broke up for me.
Oh, yeah, I can't hear Agnes.
I think she said release your inhibitions. Is that what you said, Eugene? How did you release your
Yeah.
inhibitions?
Just so I can
Well,
go over it again, because I do it differently. So please
yeah.
enlighten me.
Well, that fact that I was highlighting, it was many things, of course, like in my general life experience, but it was a huge impact to be around people who had none such thing as social inhibitions and just be with them and watch and live with them. And it doesn't mean that it's always great, because there's like a lot of things that, like, that I saw that were like over the top, but it's just not my beach, so to say. But I took a lot of things from those people, whether in Jamaica and Brazil, and I could see the potential that they gave me. That was something I didn't have naturally. And just even the knowing that it's possible, to, with the right facial expression, with the right words, with the right phrase, that you can connect to somebody, and you don't have to, be afraid and fear for what they're gonna say, what they're gonna do. And then a nice flavor on top of that is more than a flavor, but autonomy really added a lot of meaning to that, because in the autonomy course we learned also how to do it strategically, in a way, that we analyze people's body language, people's way of talking, their personality type. And then, of course, that gives a whole deeper level to it, because then you learn to express yourself in a way that the other person also will hear and will understand what you're trying to communicate to them. So, yeah. So those were some of the factors that really made a difference for me in terms of connecting to others and improving my social abilities, of which I still have much to learn too.
Thank you for
I,
sharing.
I'd add something to that, because I had a similar experience in Colombia, and my feeling is that coming from the United States and going to Colombia, there's like this very like manner, like the purposeful manner. Like you go to a hardware store, you say, I need this plumbing fixture, I need this pipe, I need this wire, whatever. And the Colombian would go, whoa, 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 who are you? And then they would have to like get to know you. Then they'd say, okay, you might have to have a conversation. It's like, oh, you're from so and so, how's that? They might ask you like 10 questions about who you are, where you come from, what's your family like, all kinds of stuff like that. And before you know it, you've created a relationship with the guy that's like helping you at the hardware store. And it just happened everywhere that I went, so there is a difference in the way that they see like individual relationships, that is like there's like a much higher bar before they would even consider talking to you or serving you, because they want to know who you are. And I thought it was great myself, and it really did make a difference in my life. And certainly one of the reasons I live in Latin America is because of that kind of difference.
Big time. And such a difference in the quality of life, I feel, from a German born and raised perspective, is like, but that's not effective, that's lazy, them chatting the whole time like about foolishness and where you come from, but you there half an hour, you still didn't get your wire and your stuff, and then when he brings it, it takes too long, but it's just like what Willow mentioned. People told you were lazy all the time, but it's it's easy to label somebody like that. But then if you look at it from a different perspective, it's like, how stressed is he or she, like, what's the quality of life, not only like the speed they get something done, and is it really about getting things done at a certain speed, or is it about actually maybe making next move actually is exactly the contrary, to slow down and to learn to look left and right and to appreciate each other and relationships.
Yeah. Rod, did you want to chime in on anything on that? Because we've kind of dived off topic a little bit, but that's okay. We can go with building confidence and getting rid of inhibition.
No, that to kind of keep it on topic, but not really, right? It made me think about my interactions with people in the.
Because we went on about shoes, and so that is like, fine, you're gonna divert it, fine, we're gonna divert this way.
Remember, Rod, you're here as an example of an ideal father, so teach us.
So no, what I was gonna say is that's a good point that Michael and Dennis made about, building rapport, right? Before exchanging, anything. And that's something that I think that I don't do. Now that you mentioned it, like I don't, if I'm at Home Depot or whatever, I just go, hey, where's this at? And they just point me to it. Or even at work, I'm like, when people ping me and they're like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, what do you want? Like just get to it. Like, you're contacting me for a reason. You don't care, how I'm doing or anything like that. You have a point, so get to it. And so maybe I should take a step back and like, which I do. I'm never rude about it, but it's in my mind. I'm like, okay, you're here for a reason. What do you want? And I'm the same with my cousins. They're, hey, Roger, how you doing? Da, 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 da. I'm like, all right, what you want? You want something? Like, spit it out. And maybe that isn't such a good thing, and it's making me go back to my mother father voice in my brain, right? And the father is like, get it done, what, go 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 go. And the mother voice is more so like, hey, how you doing? How's your mom? How everybody has a family. And so I think it's a good balance. Now the more I think about it, and maybe we should all strive, because I really like what Dennis does a lot when he says, he always looks at it from both perspectives. And I think that's something that's very, very valuable, especially nowadays, with everything that's going on and everything, that we should take the time a little more often to say, how you doing?
Yeah,
I think that would be
I
very
agree.
useful, and actually mean it, right? Not just say it because you want to get past the formalities to ask your question, but, really, really wonder how someone's doing and build that rapport.
I think that it's really important, especially with in these days of like distance, humanity, and all of that. Like, I don't think that is necessarily good for us as humans, and I think connection is where we really thrive. But we can get connection in many different ways. So let's make sure we get that connection as much as we can, as often as we can.
Thank you. All right, our next section: understanding the lack of healthy fathers. All right, so we're talking about just the general
A poorarchy.
overall
We're talking
population.
about poorarchy, how we're being governed by boys, not by men. And
Well,
yeah.
did you know if your father was able or willing to take on the role as a father? How about that?
Ask that again.
Was your That's all right. That's all right. Did you know? Was your father willing to take on his role as father?
So you're saying if a
Um,
guy had a kid but he wasn't willing to do it, we shouldn't blame him for it? Hi, Bart.
Well, well, how about this? He may have had lack of a well-developed personality with a strong self-esteem, an internal balance, and the ability to accept his fears and mistakes.
Well,
Does
in my
anybody
case,
know a
I
father like
know.
that?
I think that's for me, that's hard to like diagnose, if that's the right word, or to label. Because I feel like my biological father thought he was ready, 100% thought he was ready to have a child. But when the child came and demands were made, it didn't work out. And still to this day, we don't have a very good relationship. But then another man literally stepped up and was like, I don't know if I'm ready to be a dad. And then took on 2 kids and then 2 more of his own. So like, I don't even know if he really thought, like, I don't know if you can really think that you're fully ready. Like, I don't know if there's a way to measure that.
Yeah, but
but not only.
it takes kind of acknowledgement to realize that there's a lack there, like a well-developed personality with strong self-esteem. That sounds very solid, like a solid person to me. An internal balance, ability to accept fears and mistakes as like a learning process.
I can see that. At the same time, I've witnessed, life has shown me examples of where none of that was there, but the process of becoming a father or mother brought all of that out in the person.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
So
say
it,
is that like I didn't become who I am today without my daughter being born and, you know, having people that, you know, that I'm responsible for, right? That none of that would have happened without them. Before them, I was, you know, I would say even keeled and everything like that. I partied a lot and I was a lot less responsible, but I was still the same person, I feel like, for the most part. So I think it's more so. I've heard something about being a good parent that was what I think is the best kind of explanation. It's like I forget where I saw it or who saw it or if the person that said it was even professional, but I just liked it. They was like, you know, buying all of the books in the store on how to be a good parent probably won't teach you how to be a good parent, but the fact that you're going to buy the books and reading them makes you a good parent,
yes, that's
right?
where I was going. So that list I was saying is like they're ideals, but to be able to recognize that, oh, I'm lacking somewhere. I need to you know, I need to have some type of strategies. I need to be able to do better than just kind of spiraling down. That's exactly right. That's where I was going to head with that. So thank you, Rod.
No, perfect. And that's what I was gonna say. I was like, those sound like the perfect person, right? Like, not even forget dad. Like the person that you described is like the person that we all striving to be. So I don't know if that person
Yep.
even exists, you know,
Yep.
not exists,
And
but
not
exists
not
consistently.
yes, consistently. Yes, that's right. That's what I said the other day at our last show. Like, I'm not an ideal mom. I always say that I aspire to the ideal, but I'm just a human being, and sometimes I can't catch myself.
Because we're all stumbling through this process, right? Like there's no manual on how to be a human even, right? Forget a parent or you know, a sibling. Like, how am I the prime, you know, functioning human being in this body? You know, what's that? So,
Yep.
yeah, like those are all ideals.
I personally love the work of Dr. Shefali on conscious parenting. She wrote a few books as well. I really enjoy her work on that. And maybe if somebody who is listening or watching wants to go deeper into parenting or conscious parenting particularly, then that might be a great road to go down.
I liked reading Parenting for a Peaceful World. That was a good book.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a little inadequate. The only thing that's coming to mind is a quote off of a movie, an Adam Sandler movie, actually. It was Blended, about like, it was about a step family, like blending together and how to like actually be parents, and these kids needed a dad, and this one kid is really angry, and so he teaches them how to fight, and the kid ends up like punching him in the face, and the guy goes down, and the kid was like, "Are you okay?" And the adult was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And so the kid gets mad again, and he's like, "Does this make me a man? Does this make me a man?" And Adam Sandler is just like, "No. Asking if I was okay, that's a step." And I was like, that is great advice. Like, you just let him get his anger. And I know it's like a movie and all, but still, the hypothetical scene of like, okay, you've got that anger, do something with it. Now, analyze your actions. What do you feel? You feel a little guilty for punching someone in the face because you're angry? Maybe you should. Maybe you should ask if they're okay. And I like, that's to me like, that's the part of like having a father that like, I got half of that from my stepdad and I got none of that from my real dad, where it's like, do something with your anger. Don't just sit there and cry about it. Do something. And then deal with the consequences. Like, that's tough love. I don't know. I think of tough love when it comes to dads.
Yeah.
Just a message for our listeners on YouTube. We're apparently having some issues on YouTube. It shows me that there are 3 watchers on YouTube, but apparently they're not seeing it correctly. So if somebody's still stuck on YouTube trying to watch us, do check us on Periscope or Facebook, if you like. The live stream may be better there, because apparently, yeah, every message I type to YouTube, it's repeating 10 times. It's quite fun. Yeah.
I was just going to add on to something Willow said there in regard to, the book we mentioned yesterday. I think that's, was that Robert Moore that wrote that book? The King, Magician, Warrior, Lover, however that thing goes. But in that they, shoot, I lost my thought, damn it.
King, warrior,
Something I
magician, lover. How to become a man from being an unruly child.
But what Willow was saying about analyzing and kind of understanding the actual repercussions of the actions that you're taking, I think that's a really a good assessment of like where manhood needs to go today, because unfortunately we have a lot of people that they're just stirred into an emotional state, and then they're told what to do, and usually that's some irrational behavior that makes no sense at all, and it doesn't really solve anything. It just creates more problems. And I think that's certainly one of the things that in the book I mentioned. It's the difference between being the hero, which is the childhood um, archetype, versus being a warrior, which is the man archetype. And that is understanding the repercussions. A hero just goes to battle because it's the manly thing to do. It's the honorable thing to do, is go out there and fight. Whereas the warrior essentially will ask the right questions, ask the hard questions, and only go to battle for things that absolutely matter. That
But it
there's a
also
huge difference.
says that if you really want to be balanced, you need to master the warrior, the lover, and the magician, and then become the king, because the warrior never gets the girl. I thought that was interesting, that the warrior never gets the girl, because it's that energy of fight, right? And
I
it's
have
not
been around-
conducive to
I have been around
relationships.
military bases. That is not true. I've been around too many military bases. Girls flock after warriors.
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah.
even looking
They get the
dressed
girl.
like them.
They get the girl for one night, but they don't get the girl for a lifetime. It's not the same
I
getting the
get what
girl.
you're saying. There
Oh,
will
what?
be higher rates of divorce.
Open up another can of worms here.
Different show?
I was gonna say that is also true with military families as well.
Yeah.
All right.
I was thinking that the warrior doesn't get the girl because he dies in battle, but that's a better analogy.
That could be too. Or because he is battle. He's got battle in his heart. And when you have battle in your heart, you cannot create a home, like a household. You know what I mean? It's not conducive to the home hearth.
This was a theory.
But
that
warriors
I've
grow
had many
up.
Discussions.
Warriors are not doomed. They grow up. They become kings, and then they can have a household. It's not like you're stuck in a warrior mode for the rest of your life. It's just, it's an adult archetype, but it's not the mature archetype. Sorry, Willow.
Well, in that regard, I think the difference between a hero, which is the childhood archetype, is that is the measured force versus just unconditional force.
Very cool stuff. All right, we're going to move on towards our last section now, healing the emotional gaps. How to make up the shortcomings that were not experienced. For me personally, I would say that it is learning about myself. All the lovely exercises I've been doing with you guys over the past 6 months, maybe. I was going to say year, but I guess that would have to include the autonomy course as well, and all the growth that I've experienced there.
It's been a year
yeah,
since we graduated, Deirdre, from autonomy.
No, it hasn't.
It's
has
been
not
a
been a
year
year
since
since
we
we graduated.
graduated.
Okay.
It's true.
I've known you guys for like 18 you know,
That's
close to
when
18
we
months.
met.
Yeah.
We met a
That's
month
so
ago, a
weird.
year ago.
Oh yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
we got the
anyway,
pins.
I got the pens.
That's so weird.
Yeah, pins.
That is weird.
Anyway, moving on. So, Warrior.
Okay. How to pick up the shortcomings that were not experienced.
Oh, yeah. So I think that you have to just like think about, okay, so my parents were really crappy.
Okay, yeah, all right. If we're going to go talk about it, fine.
No, I was thinking about saying something and then I had the other thing. I have too many thoughts in my head. It's exciting day. No, if we didn't experience some, say for example, your parents were not crafty, but you're very crafty, so you never got to like, you know, build crafts and experiment with like baking soda and sand and weird things in your house as a child, right? But you're an adult now, and if it's something that you're like, oh, I wish I had that in my childhood, you can still spend half a Saturday playing these crafty games with yourself and maybe make something cool and, you know, have that wound fulfilled with your own inner parenting game, as opposed to yearning for something that didn't happen 40 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, and I was to go off Agnieszka, I was going to say that is like we're, you know, if you can recognize it, then that's the first step, right? Like, with anything, the first step is recognizing there's a problem, and then the second step would be, like Agnieszka said, carving out some time in your schedule to do whatever it is that you are missing, and create that now.
Well, I think, like if you watch, any of the drama TV shows, like even the Brady Bunch, like the Brady Bunch goes to Hawaii or something like that. And you go, oh man, I wish my family would go to Hawaii. I wish my dad would have a job where we can go to Hawaii. And you never get that. Is that what we're talking about? That kind of desire to have
No.
those kind of feelings, or
It could be, yeah. You could how to make up for the shortcomings there, meaning like you didn't get the type of relationship you wanted or needed with your father. It was missed out on, or it was that he was too busy, or it wasn't like you said, ideally portrayed as it was on TV.
Or even like he had to be drunk.
That's a artificial reality that they're trying to emulate fatherhood. And so that's why the emptiness is there, that it's not connecting to what is really happening in reality. So how would you, I know, like I said, I just learned to look at myself. So that's kind of where I was going with that. Did that make it clearer?
Yeah, well, I do feel, I would just say, based on what you said and what I described there, that I think that's one of the things that we have to deal with in regard, and I think society has to deal with, is the fact that, we've got all these movies, we've got all these different representations of what people want in the world, or what the movies tell us we should want. And we don't really cherish the time that we do have with the people that are important, and certainly like our parents are one of those. And so there we go, where like if we're kind of cajoled by the media and the kind of the charms that they put out, in a lot of cases we come up with voids for stuff that maybe we think we need, but maybe we don't. And so maybe that's kind of one of the psychological games they've played with us.
I just remembered.
Good point.
I just remembered a passage of a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda. And there, in a nutshell, the disciple had progressed almost to the end, to the goal. And but there were desires still, and there was one particular desire that he held. And so his guru, his master, would eventually grant or fulfill him that desire and let him have, I believe it was a castle or a palace. So he would basically manifest that for him in order for that desire to be gone. So in the fulfillment of that desire, he wanted to see or to have that castle and that palace and walk through it and enjoy it and So once he experienced that, then even that last desire would have dissolved. And that is what was still in between him where he was at that point and achieving his, the goal basically of enlightenment, of being in harmony, in total harmony. So that is something interesting, because sometimes, the desire is a natural thing that we have. We experience desires on many levels. So are those, is it to have the discipline? We talked about that earlier. I think Willow was mentioning that, to telling ourselves, oh, don't have it, don't have the desires, like hold back or so. Or is it sometimes, again, the other way to position yourself, okay, like maybe in the fulfillment of that desire, it actually, will dissolve. Okay, I want to have the nice big car, but I'm not supposed to have a car. A car is nothing, it's just material. But okay, let me have the car, and you drive around it a few days, and then you realize, okay, that's nothing to, okay, what's next? Is there anything next? And then, that lesson in itself will actually teach you more than artificially depriving you of it and disciplining you, so to say.
Well said.
I wanted
Willow,
to I wanted to expand on a phrase that Mike had said about these being like on TV, it's a representation of what you want, and you also added, or what you're you're told that you want. I think the first statement is more correct. It is a representation of a desire that you have. When you see the Brady Bunch and their father takes them on the trip to Hawaii, you don't care about the trip to Hawaii. It's not about the trip to Hawaii. It's about the trip to Hawaii means that father loves his family so much that he's working his ass off, and then he comes home and he spends time with his family, and then he wants to go spend more money and more time with his family. Like, maybe it's that. Like, it's not actually about the trip, it's about what that trip represents. So when you want something off TV, you really should be asking yourself, okay, I really want this. This draws me in. Why do I want it? What is so seductive about it? Why can I not get this out of my mind? Because exactly like Dennis said, like following that desire to its end course will sometimes show you that what you thought, like maybe you wanted the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but then you get there and you realize the pot of gold isn't anything what you thought it was. It's completely different.
You realize that the one who was having the desire is not really who you are anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how I felt. That's how I felt during Mrs. Doubtfire. That movie made me cry every time, because that father really cared. Like my father, when he left, it was just dust. Right? But this dude, he came back as a nanny. Like, I mean, how dedicated is this guy to his children, It always made me like verklempt. I always wished for that level of commitment from like he quit his job. Like he did everything just to be with his kids, right? So cool.
He got fired. That's how the divorce
For some reason, as a child,
I don't care.
I did not grasp. I didn't grasp the concept of what was going on as a child. I was like, look how wonderful he's being. He's trying to like get back into his family, and then his family's going to realize how crazy he is, and they love him so much and they want him back, and they're going to get back together. And then it doesn't happen. And I was like, excuse me? All of his work for nothing. Like, okay, now he gets to see his kids, which is what was supposed to happen all along. It was very anticlimactic, and it kind of like pissed me off at the end of it.
Obviously a chick flick. I've never seen that.
You've never seen Mrs. Doubtfire?
It's a kid's movie.
I know
I don't like
chick
flicks.
It's not a chick flick. It's a kid's movie.
It's a family
You're
movie.
a chick flick.
You probably
You
saw
should
it, but it's
watch
called
it.
differently
It's
in
hilarious.
Mexico.
Okay, let's hear from Rod. Enough of this bickering.
No, what I was gonna say is the more I think about it, I kind of had to. I hate to put it this way, but I'm gonna just say it. Like the TV kind of raised me in a sense, right? Where I thought, well, I thought you solve conflicts by being funny and apologizing, all the interactions. And so I'll say that was my biggest kind of learning and growing up, is realizing that, the movies is just that, the movie, or the TV is just that, it's TV. It's not, you have to have those uncomfortable conversations to resolve any issues. They don't just kind of go away on their own because you made a funny joke and you got a hug, right? So yeah, it's just funny that you brought up Mrs. Doubtfire and everything like that, because I always thought, everything good will happen eventually, which I still think that, but it doesn't automatically happen. How about that? You have to take steps and you have to do work to get some of the things that we saw on TV, get some of the outcomes that we see on TV.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's some nice kind of ideas in there that I try and adopt. I agree with that. All right. So we're coming up to the end of our show. Is there anything that anyone else wanted to add for us?
If there's anything listeners would like to add, the chat thing is still open. We had some comments from Pam, but they were like technical, so nothing to share. But hello, Pam. We love you.
Hi, Pam. Thank you for letting us know.
Pam.
You're darling.
And Bart said thank you for sharing all our stories, and that it's a very interesting topic, which is true. It is.
All right. Well, Mike, did you want to wrap it up? Sorry, I'm feeling really tired. I've been awake since 1.
I can do that if you want.
It's super early. It's super early for you. Every time we do a podcast, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning.
No. It's usually 9 in the morning. I've been awake since 1.
It's the meeting on Sundays
Our
that
meeting
messes with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, resuming the last topic of healing the emotional gaps would be to realize that the emotions are there. They're pointers. They're there to point me to something, maybe a lack or maybe something, they need to overcome. So it would mean for me, what is it they're pointing me at? What is the barrier? How can I overcome it to transition into action? Again, what kind of action can I take? And that could be an action only on the inside as well. Maybe it's something intellectual or mentally, or maybe it's, maybe it could be something physical too. Maybe I have to get up and work out or do whatever. But I would want to see them as pointers. Life is pointing me something that emotion comes up. Is there something I need to, revisit from way back then, in order to transition and to move forward on that level? And I think that would be like one approach I'd take to heal emotional gaps that I perceive. Once I perceive them, and things like topics like today's topic would certainly help me to even look at that, because it's very easy with TV, media, and everything else going on in our lives to not look at those things, and they seem to be essential because they keep on coming up if you don't deal with them.
Thank you.
I think maybe we should just go around the room and what is it about today's show that really impacted you? What was the most important thing you found out of this show?
I'll say.
Oh, go ahead, Rod.
No, I'll say most important thing I got was start taking more note of who's talking in my head and what are they trying to say. Like Dennis was kind of mentioning, is like the emotions. What are they pointing me to? So just start paying more attention to the voices in my head. And if they're old voices, then they're just recordings.
Yeah. Cool. Did you want to go next, Mike? Sorry, I'm starting to feel so tired.
I was going to wait till last, but go ahead.
Drunk. Okay, for me it was I don't know, I can't remember. Yeah, actually, hang on, it just came to me. Just moving myself forward, just kind of like Rod said, just being okay that just because I didn't experience any ideal father doesn't mean that I can't kind of aspire to that for myself.
Agnieszka?
The father wound is one of the most deepest experiences of my life, so it took a long time for me to analyze and work with and work out all these different tidbits. If had I known about it when I was younger, or known how to do more effective self-parenting when I was younger, it probably wouldn't have taken as long. So I think that's key.
How about you, Willa?
Even though I've known for a long time, I'm very emotionally detached from my whole like father wound situation. This episode kind of like reaffirmed that it's like, oh, I still have that issue and I am emotionally detached, and maybe that's served me well for this many years. But it's not serving me anymore. It's not doing what the job that it started out doing. It doesn't have to do that anymore, and it's kind of getting in the way now. And I think it probably affects my relationships with men in general. I'm not really sure what the most important part of it is. I just know that was like an introspective part where I'm like, okay, I need to give this more attention, and having a label for it and being like, oh yeah, emotional detachment is still a coping mechanism, helps me be like, all right, I don't want to live with coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Dennis?
How is the father voice, that voice, how is it impacting myself? And which part of my true self, or which part of myself, which is my true self, is not, cannot, and will never be influenced by that? This would be the line of thought that the conclusion I come to. It's like, wow, it's there. Well, I haven't even recognized that it's there and that it's influencing me. But then the one that is being influenced by that voice, is that really me?
Man, for me, I think, and I think Agnieszka and Deidre, you mentioned this, and maybe Willow as well. This time that we've shared together for these past few months, almost, I don't know, are we going on a year now?
It was December when we started, mid-December. No, quite, not even 6 months, maybe 6 months.
It has
Oh my
been,
gosh, it feels longer.
Man, it has been an incredible amount of growth for me, and it's like that is just repeated every time we have a show. I feel like I'm growing so much because I get more information about myself, and some of the things that are brought up I think are really important. So I'm so happy to be involved with this show, and all of you, and I greatly appreciate all the things that you guys have brought to the table. Every single one of you have got some incredible attributes that I feel strongly about, and really feel it is a powerful experience for me. So I think we should just end on that note, is that we've got something here that's incredibly powerful. And certainly, Rod, thank you for joining us for the show tonight.
Yeah, man, give thanks.
And what do we got for next week, as a matter of fact?
We don't know. We haven't decided yet.
We don't know.
The meeting is on Sunday. We don't have anything planned as of now, so it's a crapshoot. It'll probably be good, whatever it is, because surprise.
I'm not going to be here next week, guys, because I've had a really huge week, and so I need some time off.
That's cool. We'll call it in your absence.
We will miss you.
You've been managing the last 2 weeks like a champion, so we can take over for a bit.
Yes.
All right. Thanks,
Well
guys.
done, and thank you, Deidre.
Thanks, Deirdre.
Well done, job.
Let's play the outro and say goodbye, huh? No drums anymore?
Bye.
That's too bad. Okay, hang on. Bye, everybody.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye.
Peace.